Professor Asanga Tilakaratne from University of Colombo, Sri Lanka with us today. Professor here for 10 days short visit to Buddhist Mahavihara. So somehow rather we managed to get him for 2 days, today and tomorrow. Even though he has very tight schedule, we managed to make it for him to come to our temple Sekya in Malacca. So we are very fortunate to have him here because Professor is a very leading and renowned Buddhist scholar, not only in Sri Lanka but also in the world today. So therefore, he will be delivering two sessions today and tomorrow. So we warmly welcome Professor Asanga Tilakaratne to Malacca, Malaysia. In fact, he has been here for many years ago, I think before we were born, in 1970s and 80s. So anyway, on behalf of Sekya Temple, we welcome Professor to our temple with big 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Very good evening to everybody. Venerable members of the Mahasanga, friends. This time I am here in... can you hear me now? Okay. I'm in Kuala Lumpur for some work related to the Vihara. And then I was very happy to accept the invitation from Malacca temple to visit here and also share some of my ideas with you and also have some sort of Dhamma discussion with you. So, Venerable Sangha, thank you very much for inviting me, and also thank you so much welcoming me. And I thought I will talk to you about something, not something very deep, but something pretty simple related to our day-to-day life. Now, particularly when we think about our own lives as followers of the Buddha, as followers of the teachings of the Buddha, it is important for us to think about nature of our own life. Buddhists, we have many good expectations about our future life. To be born in a good place and ultimately to attain nirvanic bliss. But how about the present life we are living right now? Of course, as Buddhist, it is true to say that in our present life, we are getting ready for the future good life. That's very good. There is no doubt about that. But at the same time, it is very important for us to live this life according to the teaching of the Buddha, and live a very happy and satisfied life. Okay? Now, for today's discussion, I thought I will talk to you on well-being. Now, when we say this concept well-being, you know that particularly by this time, a lot of people talk about this. Particularly when we talk about psychology, counseling, mental health, and many areas we are referring to well-being. Now, this is a very interesting thing because well-being is a very wide concept. However, what does well-being really mean? Okay, that is one important question. And then, what is the nature of it? How can we get it, achieve it? Finally, if our well-being is in danger, if our well-being is threatened, then what can we do? So, these are few questions that I will be sharing with you tonight. We will begin with, okay, what is well-being? What do we mean by this particular concept? Now, when we look at our own life, if we feel that we are okay, we are all right, things are fine, now that is basically a sense of well-being. Now, if I feel that no, something is not right, something is not quite correct, and you feel not very happy about yourself and the things around, then of course that means that we don't have a good sense of well-being. Now, this can happen at two levels. One is the day-to-day level, and another thing would be our general way of life. For example, when you get up in the morning, sometimes, as you know, there are some days we feel that things are not quite right. And a strange thing is we even don't know why. But the fact of the matter is that we know that things are not right. Now, what should we do about it? Now, this is one. The other thing is sometimes for a period of time, we start feeling that no, things are not very good. So either it can be one particular day you get up from your sleep and you find that you don't feel very good. Or it could be that sometimes we feel that things are not working right for us even for a longer period. Now, the question is, what can Buddhism do to us? I mean, we talk about, as you know, very, very, very big things, very great things. So what I'm talking to you tonight is not something very difficult, doctrinal subject or anything. This is something quite related to our own daily existence, okay? So I have prepared a PowerPoint presentation. I will go along with that. And you can ask any questions related to it. So what I will do is I will be maybe taking 40-45 minutes or something for my the talk, and then we can go on. This I will not spend too much time, but this covers basically what people mean by well-being today. So I say well-being is a highly discussed subject in studies on human beings. But it has been defined by many. Some define it as what is ultimately good for a person. Health, happiness, and prosperity are considered essential aspects of that. Now, when we look at our own life, I mean, there is no doubt that we need health, we need happiness, and we need prosperity. Tomorrow I will be talking on peace and happiness. So I will not be talking about much today about it, but you can see that actually happiness is also an essential part of our idea of well-being. So we can't talk about well-being, our well-being, without talking about our happiness. But anyhow, Buddhism has quite a lot to teach to us on happiness, so I will be talking more about it tomorrow. But anyhow, basically people think that health, happiness and prosperity are considered to be the essential aspects of it. Some talk about multi-dimensional well-being, comprising the following: competence, emotional stability, engagement, meaning, optimism, positive emotion, positive relationship, resilience, self-esteem, and vitality. Now, of course, this list can go on and on and on. So you don't need to remember these things at all. But basic idea is how do we feel about ourselves? So actually, according to my understanding, the concept of well-being differs from people to people. And also it differs from one age group to the another. For example, very young small children will feel very happy about something. And then their concept of course, if you ask them, they will not even know what well-being is. But when you look at them, you can see that they are behaving normally and they're behaving happily. They continue any of those obligations to fulfill, then sitting somewhere and quietly and sipping a cup of coffee and reading a book, or maybe visiting the monastery and sitting and meditating. These are some of the things we think that our well-being. So you can see that the concept of well-being, I don't ask you to follow this list, because ultimately it is something that is quite personal to person. However, the most important thing is that ultimately we are happy, we are content, we live a good life. So this is what really I mean by well-being, and we will see what Buddhism has to offer. Okay? Because very often, particularly associated with religions, there is a concept of fear. There is a concept of fear for certain things. Fear to do wrong things is a good thing. But sometimes in religions, we find that fear considered to be a virtue. So you have to have the fear of God, for example, and then so people are not happy. Sometimes I have noticed that, this is not a criticism of any religion or anything. Sometimes in the religious paintings, I hardly see a happy face. All the faces are fear-stricken. But, there is no reason to be like that. When you look at the Buddha's teaching, we know that we have to have fear on certain things. Particularly sometimes it is said that you have to have fear about sansaric life. But then that doesn't mean that you have to be fear-stricken and be gloomy and retire into a corner and live your life. So this whole concept of fear, which is a very much part of many religions, you do not find in that manner. So it is something very, very important for us to remember. Now, for example, this is not an accident. You look at Buddhist paintings. You look at the paintings of the Buddha. Traditionally, for centuries, Buddha has been molded, Buddha has been depicted as a smiling person. It's not a laughing person, but it's a smile. That smile is pervading the entire face. So there is a difference between laughing and smiling. So I'm not talking about laughing here, but I'm talking about the smiling. Then now in the Buddhist literature, there is a term to refer to the Buddha. Now that says that Buddha had always a smiling face, happy face, content face. So now following the Buddha, the question is how we can have the same Buddha's face with our face. How can we absorb that happiness of the Buddha? So, okay, this is the idea. So anyway, this is how well-being is defined in literature. Now, I would say that well-being is defined as culture relative and context dependent. Nevertheless, we may agree that it should encompass total well-being of an individual. Now, when I say it is culture relative, in different cultures, in different areas, different countries, how people become happy can be different. So the important thing is that people are happy, but of course how they become. So ultimately the defining of the concept of well-being is culture relative, depending on the cultures. And also I would say it is context dependent. It depends on different situations we are in life. Nevertheless, we may agree that it should encompass the total well-being of an individual. So when I say total well-being, it is not one aspect of human life. It is not only wealth. It is not only education. It is not only friends. It is not only how you spend your leisure time and whether you have a very big vehicle and the huge house and things like that. All those things are important. There's no doubt about that. But however, the moment we talk about the total well-being, it's a concept that encompasses all these things plus some kind of positive feeling. Ultimately, having a good car, having a good family, having a good house, and all these things need to contribute to the ultimate sense of well-being. Now, in society, in our own life, we know that we have so many things. Actually, we own many things. However, whether your sense of well-being corresponds to what you have is a question. Sometimes, we have so many things, but we are not happy. We are not content, but we do have so many things. So therefore, in this sense, what is more important is not how many things you have, but how you feel about it, okay? In this discussion, I'm not going to summarize the reviews of the modern views of well-being. What I would like to do is to examine the Buddhist views, insights and practices relevant to the total well-being of a person. Okay, well-being. The Buddha's mission started with asking his first 60 monastic followers to go to people for their welfare and happiness, hita and sukha. In the Buddhist literature, there are two Pali words which are very well known, bahu jana hitaya, bahu jana sukhaya. These two Pali words mean for the welfare and happiness of many people. Hita basically means welfare, well-being. Sukha means comfort and the happiness. So the whole idea was hita and sukha. welfare, well-being, and comfort. Now, this is the very first instruction of the Buddha to his monastic followers. Now we know the Buddha's story. Buddha taught his first sermon, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, and then there were 5 the disciples who realized the Dhamma, and then subsequently there were altogether at the very first stage there were 60 arahant who achieved the highest goal. So they have achieved their highest goal, and then Buddha advised them to all go in different directions and then spread this message of the Dhamma. For what? For the sake of hita and sukha, for the sake of welfare and happiness of the people. Now, why I bring this point here is, when we talk about Buddhism, it was basically the idea of welfare, happiness and well-being were the very central ideas. Why did Buddha want people to follow his teaching? Because Buddha thought that people have to be happy. So this is basically the idea. So it is said that the Buddha is born into this world for the welfare and happiness of many. Bahujana hitaya, bahujana sukhaya. It is to achieve this goal that the Buddha lived in this world, traveling to places, meeting people and teaching them. The Buddha asked his monastic followers to do the same. This shows that well-being and happiness are at the center of the very existence of Buddhism as an organization. Now again, I say this when we talk about Asanga practice, we talk about many very big things, very big ideas. However, Buddhism makes it very clear that you have to make it your beginning from right here, from this life itself. Because the whole idea was that without making it happy, how can you think about making your next life happy? If you are not happy in this life, if you are not content in this life, how can you make your next life happy? I mean, what is the meaning of that? So the whole thing is, the practice has to be something you do with a pleasant mind, calm and quiet mind, where when you look at your face, you must be, people should be able to recognize you. Okay, this person should be a person following something sublime and great. I mean, for example, my one personal experience is, I'm coming from India, just about being there for a couple of months, and then I always kind of could recognize who were engaged in meditation. Okay? Now, I mean, ordinary Indian people, but there are people who are particularly following Goenkaji method and the meditation method. Very often I can look at them and say, I can recognize them. How? Because usually, please don't take in a negative sense, not a criticism, but Indian people mind their own business and they don't have time to smile to you, okay? So they just go on their own business. However, whenever I come across the people who are meditating, they are capable of smiling with you. When you look at their face, you can see that their face is calm and quiet. It doesn't come automatically. It comes with your inner meditation. I will talk about that a little bit later, but anyway, that's understanding. So, therefore, the center of the very existence of Buddhism as an organization, is this particular thing. From a Buddhist perspective, well-being is the overall sense of satisfaction, contentedness, and feeling of happiness. As a human being living in this world among other human beings, what happened? How did it go automatically? Okay. So, living in the world among other human beings as a part of the larger reality of natural world comprising animals, birds and the environment, trees, plants, rivers, oceans, etc. Now, what I try to say in this paragraph is actually we need to, in order to understand our own sense of well-being, we need to think about ourselves. We need to imagine ourselves as a human being living in the world among other human beings, okay? And then as a part of the larger reality of natural world comprising animals, birds and the environment, means trees, plants, rivers, oceans and etc. Now what it means is this, we need to envisage, think about our own existence as a part of larger reality, okay, as a part of larger reality. Now why I say this is particularly, that today in the world there's a very ironical situation. On the one hand, through different social media, technology, communication methods, traveling, we are connected to the entire world. From your home, you can look at what is happening all over the world, and then we can reach any point of the world within 12 hours, 15 hours or something. And then neighboring countries, of course, it's a matter of couple of hours. Look at the society seems to be particularly younger generation, they seem to be more and more becoming self-centered and confined to themselves as if the outside world doesn't exist. Now, for example, you see a young boy or girl, walking on the road with their the music in their ear and or talking in their telephone. Not that necessarily they are talking to a friend in their telephone, or not that necessarily they are listening to your music. They make a statement from that. That statement is, it doesn't really matter to me whether you exist or not. I have my own world. Don't bother me. Don't ask me things. I don't really care. That is the statement they make from that behavior. Now, irony is this, on the one hand, we are connected to the entire world today, but on the other hand, we are becoming more and more self-centered, confined to our own world, and then we don't want to intrude our world by anybody else. Now, if you look at the world history, history of the society, before we discovered what is called individualism, our own what is called privacy, in countries like even Europe and everywhere, people were living in a large hall within one house. Everybody was, of course, they had a issue of, how to heating and all that. So the entire family was sleeping in one particular, the area. So having individual rooms, individuality and, your own confining to your own world is, something we discovered more recently, if you look at the world history actually. So there you see ultimately we are moving towards extremely self-centered world, right? So now that is why it is important for us to think about ourselves. We are only a part of a larger reality. We are not isolated. We can't exist isolatedly anyway. We know that all these things we are using, sitting here, wearing, none of these things were made by us, right? So behind my cloth, behind this machinery, behind this glass of water, if you look at it, there is thousands of people's labor is behind there. So we can't live isolatedly anyway. We are making use of, we are the beneficiaries of all these things. Somebody made it, somebody thought about it, somebody manufactured it, somebody brought to the nearest shop for you to go and buy. So up to that point, you can see that the whole the gamut of things that surround in this one particular thing. So we are not isolated in that sense. So therefore, the larger reality is ultimately animals, birds, and the environment, trees, plants, rivers, oceans, and everything. Okay. The other point will be how one earns one livelihood, how one relates to the others, including those in one's family, workplace, society, etc., are important aspect of one's sense of well-being. So the relatedness, how you relate to others. Now again, we can see that how you relate to others is a psychological thing. It's not physical. Now, particularly in today's life, we know that you are living in, if you are living in a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom or 1-bedroom apartment, everybody is physically close to each other. There is no doubt about that. And in the big cities, people are physically close to each other. But does that mean that people are close to each other? No. So each person having his her own world and being confined. So physically, you are in proximity with others, but we are not close to them. I mean, unfortunately, same thing happens in the family. So with the family, in a small, limited apartment, you are physically close to each other, but you don't communicate. You are not able to even look into the other person's eyes and, greet. So everything becomes, sort of very mechanical. So therefore, how you relate to others in various situations, it is something very important in this concept of well-being. So it could be workplace, society, or come here, the public places, and it is an important aspect of one's sense of well-being. In Buddhism, well-being is both internal and external, inner and outer, or it is one's material well-being as well as the well-being of either psychological well-being and physical and material well-being, and both have to be taken together. Okay, so first point would be to understand that well-being in Buddhism is both inner and outer, external and internal. In other words, my physical well-being, my material well-being, how comfortable I am physically, whether I have clean and good clothes, whether I have good food to eat, and so on. So these are things that are connected to our physical well-being. However, according to Buddhism, also psychological well-being. That's a very important thing. So the well-being is both physical and psychological. Now, if you look at material aspect first, some tend to think that Buddhism despises material comfort. It is wrong. The Buddha rejected self-mortification, inflicting pain to oneself. Suffering and poverty are not praised in Buddhism. Poverty, according to the Buddha, is a sorrowful and evil. It is not a virtue believed to provide easier access to heaven. Now, again, there is a religiously popular view that poverty, being poor, is some kind of virtue. And also, related idea would be to hold that if you are rich, sometimes say filthy rich, because the assumption is you earn money in a wrong way. Of course, there are people who earn money in wrong way. There is no doubt about that. But being wealthy in the sense, material sense, is not a wrong thing or sin according. We mix up. Sometimes you can be a person who has given up everything and want to live a different type of life. But that life, characterized by absence of things, is not poverty. We need to make a distinction between. It is your choice to have things or not to have things. It's your choice. But then that is not poverty. That is what is called simplicity. You don't have too many needs. But here, important thing is, sometimes people do not have things enough for them, and then we think that to be poor is more religious, more appreciated in religion. But this again is, very wrong idea sometimes people have about. I mean, it is not that, you have to be filled with so many things. But on the other hand, you have to have things that you need. Now, particularly in the Buddhist context, we know that if you are a person who has given up desires about the worldly affairs, then of course your existence is one thing, one way. But it could not be the same for the ordinary person. For example, I remember, this again, personal story I know. Long time ago, there was one Buddhist monk who went to United States, Hawaii. I know it because I studied those days in Hawaii State in United States. Now, I know this monk who went to airport to travel to Hawaii. So that this happened in airport in Sri Lanka. So when this monk traveled to the airport, he had only his arms ball hanging on his shoulder. Okay? And then he went to airport, and then he went to a checking counter where, they check your luggage and all that. The officer asked, okay, where is your luggage? And then monk got his arms ball and kept it on the table. And the officer got a little bit annoyed. He said, I asked, where is your luggage? Then monk had said, this is my luggage. And then when he opened it, inside the arms ball, there was his toothbrush, extra robe, and very few personal things inside. Now what is this? Of course, on the other hand, we have heard about Imelda Marcos, who had 1,000 suitcases to carry when she traveled. That is one extreme, of course. But here, it depends on what kind of life you are living. But what that Buddhist monk did is not applicable to everybody. It is not applicable to ordinary people like you and me and others. So to have things that you need is not prohibited in Buddhism. It is not something wrong according to Buddhism. But on the other hand, you have to understand why this Buddhist monk. Because his whole vision of life is different. So therefore he did not need many things. Right? Of course, that may be the ideal we have to be trying to reach one day. But of course, we may not be able to do that at this juncture. So therefore, this whole concept of material well-being is, something very, very interesting. That's why suffering and poverty are not praised in Buddhism. Poverty, according to the Buddha, is sorrowful and evil. Looks like this PowerPoint has its own life. Covered. Let me look at this. So how one earns one's, it's actually the next one. How can I do this?
No, because the mouse was inside my bag. So that's why you keep on moving.
So can I go up and down?
මෙන්න මේක පැත්තෙන් ගියා නම් සර්
මොකෙන්ද?
තව එකක්
Okay, fine. Okay, I was here and then I go by this, no? Okay. All right. Hopefully, thank you. Okay, so suffering and poverty are not praised in Buddhism. Poverty, according to the Buddha, is sorrowful and evil. It is not a virtue believed to provide easy access to heaven. Now further, even the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis had to have the 4 requisites: clothes, food, lodging and medicine for their sustenance. They had to have clean bodies and clean physical environment in order to engage in meditation. Now, I gave you this story of this monk who had very simple few things. However, that doesn't mean that Buddhist monks should be starving or anything. Okay, Buddhist monks have to have chivara, the robes, food, lodgings, and then also the medicine, whatever the similar requirements. Now, this is something very important. Now, when Buddhism was started in India, one mode of religious practice was what is called self-mortification. You mortify your body. You torture your body. And we are told that Buddha himself, as the Siddhartha, followed that path to the extreme for about 6 years. Actually, he went into the extreme of that. Then he realized that he did not gain anything from that. Okay? Then finally he gave up. And then he got into a ordinary, decent life, had a bath in the river, and then accepted some food for his. But then his friends, colleagues thought that, okay, now he lost the path and he got into the luxury life and they left him. But actually what the Buddha did was, gave up that mortificatory practice and then started living ordinary, normal life, taking a bath and having a meal. Now, this is something very important. So in the Buddhist practice, even the meditating Buddhist monk, he has to have a meal. He has to have a clean body. Okay? Now again, it's interesting thing in Indian, during the time of the Buddha, not only actually during the time of the Buddha, even if you now go to Benares, Ganges river, you can see all types of religious people smeared with ash and everything, semi-naked, and not having shower for years. So it's a kind of funny thing. More you are dirty, more you are religious. Is that right? I mean, that is the impression you get. In order to be religious, you can't be really a clean body. You have to have a dirty body, stinking. And you can't have the clean clothes, something like that. But it is important to remember that Buddha makes it very clear that for a Buddhist monk to meditate, he has to have clean robes. Those robes have to be clean washed robes, and a clean body. I mean, you can't meditate like scratching here, scratching there. You have to have a clean body. Not only that, in order for you to meditate, you have to have a clean place. So a monk who is meditating has to have a clean place, physically clean body, and also decent meal. I mean, you can't concentrate without a decent meal. So the point I am trying to make is this: we must never confuse these two things. Simplicity of life is one thing, but the basic need of life is common to all, everybody, including the Buddha. Now, important thing is when you look at this whole thing, so even the Buddhist monk had to have these things in order for him to spend his religious life. Now, the householders had to have these things sufficiently, and also they had to have something extra to maintain the religious people who depend on this idea. The householders, gihi, those people like all of us, who are householders, who do something, some work, business or something in order to live. According to Buddhist view, not only we have to have enough for our own sustenance, we have to have something even more. We have to have something more. For what? Now, even during the time of the Buddha, not only Buddhist monks, there were so many different religious people. They did not earn, they did not cook. They just, by their meal time, they would just go to the road and sit in front of a house and receive something. So the whole idea was every family cooked something thinking that a religious person will be before your door. In the Buddhist text Sutta Nipata, it is said beautifully, Pacchati munino bhattang, thoka thokang kule kule. Munino bhattang, the meal of the muni, the religious person, is being cooked every home little by little. So actually the whole system was made in such a way that a religious person is not a burden. You are not expected to fill his alms bowl. You just give whatever you can give, little. However, when he walks around 10, 12 houses, he gets enough and then he goes back. Okay? So for the lay people, householders, it is very important, not only they have to be self-sufficient, they have to have something extra. Now even today it is so. Now of course maybe around here you don't see it very much. You go to Thailand, you go to Myanmar, where you can see in the morning time, practically thousands of monks hitting the road with their alms bowl. And the people are not as well off as I see here. But then how do they maintain those monks? Again the same theory, same practice, where every family has some little thing for this visiting monk. So in Myanmar, I have seen that practically in the early morning, roads are filled with young and old Buddhist monks. And people without feeling much burden, because they know that they just allow something little bit to the Sangha. So happening in, it's very beautiful. So therefore in that sense, in that manner, Buddhist lay person has to be materially rich. Okay? Materially rich in order to look after yourself and also in order to look after the monks and the religious people. Of course, I don't have to say about our day-to-day, our duties for the parents, in-laws and children and all these things. I mean, all of us know about. But in addition to these things, they have to have not only things sufficiently, but also have something extra to maintain the religious people who depended on them for their existence. Being wealthy is not a sin, provided that one has earned one's wealth righteously. Again in Pali, dhammikeda, dhammaladdeda. So the point is this: Buddha doesn't fix a roof limit or upper limit for one's wealth. Buddha doesn't do that. But only thing Buddha says is, you earn money, you do that righteously. Dhammikena, Dhamma or Dharma. That means you should not do wrong things in order to earn money. But you do right things and you earn money, and Buddhism doesn't have an objection towards it. Okay. Now for example, Vishaka was the greatest supporter of the Buddha Sasana lady, and the Anathapindika, these people were rich. They were bankers. So the Buddha's time was extremely commercially high time in India. They were bankers. They were business people. So Sethi, banker. So, that was no problem at all. It's fine. But so long as they earn what they earn in a righteous manner, without violating the basic limits of righteousness. Interdependent nature of well-being, both oneself and other. Now, this is another very important aspect of when we talk about well-being. In Buddhism, well-being, welfare and happiness are not only for and the other, both. Attahita, parahita. The insight is derived from Buddhist teaching, dependent origination, paticca samuppada. One cannot neglect oneself at the expense of the other, and one cannot neglect the other at the expense of oneself. This suggests that there are limits to altruism. The self-sacrifice is not always or not generally recommended. Now, what I'm trying to tell you here is that if you take this very deep teaching of the Buddha, Paticca Samuppada, dependent origination, now very often we understand this teaching as explaining how suffering ultimately arises and ceases. Okay, it is true. The teaching basically was used by the Buddha in order to tell us how suffering arises and how suffering ceases. However, important thing is in Buddhism, Paticca Samuppada describes not only how suffering arises and ceases, Paticca Samuppada describes every happening in the universe. Every happening in the universe is dependently arisen due to natural causes and conditions. Very often, we do not properly understand the doctrine of Paticca. Actually, doctrine of Paticca, main application in the teaching of the Buddha is what we have, avidya, paccaya, sankara, and so on, how suffering arises and ceases. However, Buddha says that this particular nature, dependently arisen nature, exists in the universe. Whether Buddha were to be there to explain it and show it, because it is nothing to do with the Buddha. It is the nature of the world, and then the Buddha showed it to the world. Now, for example, in the Buddhist tradition, we have 5 what is called niyama dharmas. Niyama dharmas. Now, niyama dharmas are what? Utu niyama, bija niyama. Utu means the seasons, and then the bija, seeds, chitta niyama, kamma niyama, dhamma niyama. All 5 refer to natural phenomena. You plant a mango seed, you get mango plant. You don't have to do anything else. Of course, if the seed is good, if the other conditions are met, then you have a mango plant. You don't have to do anything else because that is what you planted. Same thing. Buddhism says, you do good, you get good. You do bad, you get bad. How? Is there anyone who is manipulating it, determining it? No. I mean, it is the nature of the things that I do good and I get good. I do bad and I get bad. Sometimes, things may be not exactly in the same way, but that is temporarily. But the usual, normal pattern is with the good intention, you do good things and you're going to get good back to you. So this Paticca Samuppada means ultimately we are dependent on others. Others dependent on us. So this interdependent character of our well-being, in other words, within your house, home, can you only you yourself eat and others are starving? Can you do that? No, we can never do that. And we will never feel good about it, right? Why? Of course, if I eat, my tummy will be, the full. But of course, if my children or other people are starving, I can't be happy about it. So my happiness depends on their happiness and vice versa. So, this interdependent nature is a very important insight we need to understand when we are thinking about the well-being. In other words, my well-being ultimately depends on the well-being of all the people. Now, all the people's well-being also has something to do with me. Now, for example, you all come to a place like this. You perform something communal thing, community, as a community. Why? I mean, you can also do worshipping at home, a place like this. And why you get together with people? I mean, there is something more to it. Otherwise, I can have a Buddha statue in my small room. Of course, you can have and you can do that. But what I'm saying is, not that it is bad or anything, but the very fact that we come together as a community it has a different meaning. It has a different meaning. Okay? So it gives a different kind of feeling to us. So therefore this interdependent character taught by the Buddha in his doctrine of dependent origination is very important. Now, one cannot neglect oneself at the expense of the other and vice versa. Now, Buddhism says that on the other hand, you have to look after yourself and while you look after the other. But then, how you do that? What is the limit? For example, if you are a business person, I mean, you can help the other business people, but at the same time preserving your own business, right? While doing damage to your own business, how can you help the other business people? So you have to look after yourself. Now, this oneself and other, this relation is a very dynamic relation, okay? So it depends on. Now, there is an interesting story, story of two acrobats. This comes in the Sanyutta Nikaya, the story of two acrobats. Now, acrobats are people, who do all kinds of things up in air. So now, before their public performance, now there's a teacher and the apprentice. Okay. Then the teacher says to the apprentice, okay, now we are going to perform in front of people. If something goes wrong, we will be perished. So, in this performance, you protect me and I protect you. So the teacher says. Pupil is kind of smarter. He says, no, teacher, you protect yourself. I protect myself. In that way, I protect you and you protect me. Now, is that clear? Okay, the teacher says that in this perilous game, you protect me and I protect you. And the student says, no. In this dangerous game, you protect yourself. I protect myself. That way we protect both. I mean, this is a very fascinating thing. In this discourse, you read it, Buddha says that ultimately the right idea belongs to the student, apprentice. Because you can't hand over your protection completely to another. And also you can't take the responsibility of the other person into your hand. I mean, sometimes as parents, as elders, we make decisions for others, for our children. But once your children are grown up, never do that. You should never do that. We must not make decisions for the sake of others. Let them make their own decisions, but you can help them to make the correct decision. As an elder or parent, you can do that. But don't take the responsibility. Of course, young, small children, parents take the responsibility, that's true. But when we are dealing with people, society with adults, we can help other people to make the correct decision. But you can't make the decision on behalf of them. Then what happens is, next decision also you have to make. Next decision is also, because that person completely depends on you. The Buddhist philosophy, Buddha's view was, no, Buddha wanted to make all his disciples independent, make their own decision. However, Buddha's role was, Buddha taught them, Buddha helped them how to make the correct decision. Here also, when this apprentice and the master, in their conversation, actually the sutta indicates that the apprentice's view is the right view. Because you take yourself, your care. You take care of yourself very well. And then you take care, other person takes care of. But then what happens is, you can't jeopardize the other person's protection and safety and make sure you are safe. No. This proper behavior is that when you do, then, both are independently self-sufficient people. So this was this very interesting discussion. So the Buddha's answer was not the denial of self usually praised in the religious circle. I mean, sometimes in religious life we say that you sacrifice your whole thing for the sake of others. It's a good thing. But as an ordinary living worldly person, we can't sacrifice ourselves completely for the sake of others. So we have to make a balance. Now this, in the whole concept of welfare, how to make this balance between atta and para, self and other, is a very, very interesting and important thing. So the one's own happiness and that of the others are interdependent. One cannot exist without the other. What is underlined is balance in one's behavior. Now let me identify some unique features in the Buddhist concept of well-being. Now one is being conscious of limits. Happiness and satisfactions do not always come with abundance of things, stuff. Happiness comes with contentment. In Buddhist analysis, human desire is endless. None can satisfy one's desire by getting everything that is desired. In the Dhammapada, Buddha says, even with that outpour of gold coins, one is not satisfied. And in the Majjhima Nikaya Rattapala Sutta, it is said that the world is deficient, unsatisfied, the slave to thirst. Hence, it is rational to be content and be conscious of one's limits. Now, in this whole, slide, what I'm trying to tell you is actually the being conscious of limits means when we are earning, when we are trying to be ambitious, earning is not bad, being ambitious is not bad, but you have to have always conscious about your limits. It is something like there is an ancient Indian story. In the story, king says to his minister, king wanted to walk around the kingdom, and then king said to the minister, cover the whole area with carpet. Then minister thought, how can you cover the whole area that king wanted to travel with carpet? Then minister thought a little bit and said, my lord, why don't you cover your feet with carpet so that everywhere you walk is like carpeted? Now you see the difference between the two approaches. One approach is, I want to walk around, I want the entire place to be carpeted. The other approach is, okay, you want to walk around, then cover your feet with the carpet or wear a pair of shoes, and it is as if everywhere is carpeted. Now here, of course, this is not a Buddhist story really, but of course this gives the very essence of knowing our limits and being satisfied. So one approach is we are trying to, like that ancient proverbial king, we try to cover the entire earth with carpet. But the Buddhism teaches us, sober mind teaches us, no, you can't do that. But instead cover your own feet, you are fine. You see, this is the whole two different approaches. Very often we try to get everything we want. That means our desire. But we will not be able to get everything we want. On the one hand. On the other hand, we strive to get something and get it into your hand, then it becomes kind of old already. Then you need something else. You need something else. Actually, if you look at the modern world, commercial world particularly, misuses, make use of that weakness of you. Now that is why you get, for example, modern telephone. Every 6 months, there is a new version of the same telephone with increased price. Okay? Not with lower price, with increased price. Now, okay, when the new version comes, this particular telephone, maybe you have bought only for 6 months ago, but already you feel now it is old. So you want to benefiting from that. Who is benefiting from that is only the commercial enterprises are benefiting. Because Buddhism says here, Uno loko atitto tanha daso in the Rattapala Sutta. We are always una, deficient. Something is lacking in us. We want something more. So, modern commercial, the establishment make use of that human weakness. However, Buddha also notices that human nature in our mind, but Buddha says that, okay, you are always unsatisfied, but make a limit. That's the Buddhist answer. But the popular commercial answer is, go ahead and buy. If you don't have money, earn. Work hard. Now, what is the end of this? Ultimately you are working, and you will be. So this is the whole contrast. Now in the Rattapala Sutta, I'm sure you must have heard about him. It's a very fascinating story of Rattapala. It comes in the Majjhima Nikaya. Please read that sutta. It's a very, very fascinating sutta. Rattapala was a very young guy, very rich. And then when he listened to the Buddha, he finally decided, no, he really have to give up everything and become a follower of the Buddha. With a lot of difficulty, he does that. And then after doing that, he meditated and he attained Arahanthood and he came to see his parents. Now when he came to his parents, he was staying in the park, belonged to the king. And the king that day happened to visit the park. And then when king saw that this young man has become a Sramana, Pabbajita, king could not believe his eyes because he was so rich, so well endowed, and there was no reason for him to leave household, okay? So then king was already very old, and then king asked, why did you do this? Why did you leave house? Then Rattapala answered to the king, great king, I saw certain natures of human life. Having seen those natures, I decided to go. One of those natures is what I mentioned here. The world is deficient. Uno loko, Uda. Uda means we are lacking in something all the time. Atitto, unsatisfied and slave to thirst. Tanha daso. Uno loko, atitto tanha daso. So the whole idea is that well-being is secured when you have realistic idea about your own limits. What can you do and what you may not want to do. In other words, we need to understand this. Several years ago, I read this book actually published by United States. Title of the book is Stuff. S-T-U-F-F. You can also Google and see that. That's a fairly large book, Stuff. What it says is actually the kind of stuff we have but we don't need. In other words, so many stuff we collect because of our desire, but we don't need them. So the stuff. Look at, the whole thing is because very often you go for shopping and you buy not because you need, but it's cheaper or it's on sale. So you buy it simply because it is sale. You don't need it, actually. So we are tempted. The whole commercial world is making use of our weakness, our psychological weakness, because the commercial world knows that our desires are endless. How much ever you produce, they can sell it. That's why salesmen are there. So the Buddhist answer to this problem is not to get rid of your desires, but to be limited by that. Okay. So this is something very interesting. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I will just go through it. I will give some. How to take when one's well-being is threatened. Actually, this is another very important point I wanted to discuss with you. Okay, we talked about the well-being. How about my well-being is threatened? We are getting old. All of us are in different stages of getting old. Now when we get old, we become physically weak. and also we become sick and all that. How do you take that? Now, health is a great thing for well-being. Now, when you are naturally old, maybe your health is not the same as that it was several years ago. So how to take that? Again, very briefly, I refer to this example of Buddha's advice to Nakula Pita and Nakula Mata. Elderly couple who complained to the Buddha of their being very old and feeble. Then Buddha says, it is lunacy to wish for perfect physical health, but make sure that your mind is not sick. So Buddha says that, so this couple comes to the Buddha and says, we are very old. The Buddha says, if you think that you can get perfect physical health, that is lunacy. That means you are crazy, because you will never get perfect physical health. Then Buddha says to them, make sure that your mind is not sick. Your body can get sick, but your mind is not sick. So this is the idea. So how to cope with the 8 natures, we know that gain, loss, and so on. So this is part of our thing. 2 inner qualities conducive for well-being. I will just go through this. Cultivating positive qualities in one's mind, cultivating a mind of loving kindness, and so on. And then having right attitudes, sammaditthi. There is not a one recipe for right attitudes applicable universally. Attitudes guided by both compassion and wisdom, karuna and prajna, are bound to be right. Well-being is impossible without these two virtues. Okay, let me come to the end of my presentation. In the Buddha's words, all beings like to live and do not like to die. All beings desire happiness and despise pain. This shows that achieving well-being is what human life is all about. Buddhism teaches us not only to strive to achieve well-being, but also to be mindful, rational, and courageous enough to cope with any threat to one's state of well-being. While striving for one's own well-being, a human being with right attitudes should strive for the well-being of others, including all other beings and environment. So ultimately, our own well-being depends on the well-being of the others. So I will wind up. Thank you for listening, and maybe we will open for if you have some questions. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, Professor. He's very passionate about his talk. So I don't know whether you have any question you want to ask, because it's rather late. But or you want to?
If it is too late, tomorrow we can have a discussion, then I can shorten my talk tomorrow and we have more discussion. But it's up to you. I'm sorry, I thought that it was.
Okay. Perhaps you can save your question tomorrow. We have another session tomorrow, same time. It will be earlier. Tomorrow will be earlier, because tomorrow there will be no puja. So tomorrow we start at 8 p.m. So you have more time.
Make sure that my talk is short, and then we have time for discussion.
Yeah. So tomorrow we can have more time to interact, because tomorrow we start 8 p.m. 8 p.m. So tomorrow please do come and join us again tomorrow for another talk by Professor Asanga. So word of thanks for Professor coming to Malacca to share his thoughts on well-being. So I hope you all learned something today, and may you all be able to benefit from it. Okay, thank you. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, good night.
Can I take my safely removing this? I noticed that